Let's have a look at Blender next. And that's a funky little tip that I got from Brian, how to create a voxel effect. Let me show you what I mean by that. Voxels, they're very popular right now. I'll go and let's go to my Ko-fi page. I think I've posted it there. I think I've also posted it on Patreon and on my website. There we go, Pixel Crap, that's it. So this is what you can do. This is the other guy that I've used from 3D Universe. I've sent him over with the DAZ to Blender bridge and then applied this voxel effect. So technically it's not actually called a voxel effect in this case. It's just a remesh modifier that has a particular setting. But I thought that's quite cute, and Brian is in fact working on an animation right now, a fully fledged animation that will feature humanoid figures that look like this, who are kind of trapped in the matrix. And it's a tie-in with his book, which is called, was it what? It wasn't What the Luck, it was the other one. It was, what was that called again, Brian? Oh, I can't remember. I've narrated it. I've spent months on it. What's it called again? It wasn't What the Luck. It was, what's the thing where the simulation hypothesis was tested? Oh, it's a great book. Great. Yeah, exactly. Little Lego, it looks like little Lego blocks. That's exactly right. Flickr World, of course. Brian, how could I have forgotten? Flickr World, you get that on Amazon. Brian's written it, I've narrated it, and it's about the possibility that people may have been trapped in the Matrix. So, haha, very, very interesting. Let's go and bring that, perhaps a little mouse character, into Blender and apply this effect to him. That would be exciting. Yes, there we go. Exactly. So yes, the voxel effect. We need an object to get started. Maybe I will just go and not quite use the cube, but let me just use, for demonstration purposes, let me just use a sphere. UV sphere is probably okay. Size also doesn't exactly matter. So what you do technically with any object, no matter if you bring it in from DAZ Studio or if you just use it in Blender, you head over to this little wrench icon here. That is the modifier properties. So with your object selected, add a modifier. And this one in particular is called the Remesh Modifier. So there are, sometimes you will find something, other bits and pieces in Blender that will allude to voxels, but this is not it actually. So you head over and add a Remesh Modifier. And its sole purpose is to change the geometry of the object. So usually that is used when you want to retopologize your object, but we basically bastardize the effect, and you can see that the geometry has changed a little bit. I'll bring that over so you can see what's going down in the zoomed in version. But Brian says, so this is currently set to voxel, but that's not actually the effect that we need. We need to set it to blocks. And when we do that, so these are the different ways that this modifier is going to be applied. Like smooth would do this, sharp would do this. And if you set it to blocks, it'll do this. And that's kind of cool. It has some settings here. So remove disconnected would mean that in the case of my crab, he had disconnected eyebrows. And if I wanted to have them participate in the remeshing, I'd have to remove this. So if I untick it, then everything that's disconnected from the kind of main geometry will also be morphed like this. The octree depth is the amount of blocking that's applied. So if you were to, whoops, I'm just trying to show you a nicer angle here. If you were to increase that, then you get a smoother amount of blocks here. And so it looks like, you can more make out the shape of the original object underneath it. And it takes Blender also quite a while to calculate this as you get into the higher depths. And the lower you make it, the more abstract the model becomes. So it's kind of cool. And it works with any object, no matter how simple or how complicated. Quite interesting. And then when you're ready, you could just go and apply the modifier. I believe there's a little menu for that here. Apply. There we go. And when you do that, the geometry is baked in. So if I do that, I don't have settings anymore. And this is now fully fledged geometry that I can go and mess with. So that's how that works in principle. Let's go and bring in something, maybe the mouse character, and turn him into a blocky type character. Take this out. I might use the bridge for that. I've only just upgraded to Blender 2.93 yesterday, so no promises. This might not actually work. I'll just use the mouse and nothing but the mouse. Let's see if it works. The DAZ to Blender bridge, interestingly, isn't hiding under File, Send To, like two bridges are. It's also not under Edit. What was the other thing where you send it to Unreal Engine? That's under the Edit menu usually. No, this one's under Script, Bridges, Blender, DAZ to Blender. Don't ask me why. See if it works. Oh, that I'm not sure. Does that look good? That reminds me of yesterday's stream. Ay, caramba, what happened here? Ah. May have found a little bug with the DAZ to Blender bridge. But yes, let's just see if it arrives. Reminds me of that scene from Star Wars. Oh, that's soft wrap, that's not it. DAZ to Blender. Import a new environment prop. Let's see if it works. Oh, it hasn't worked. Ay, caramba. Yeah, it totally hasn't worked. So, another piece of artwork, you think? What has happened to my little guy? Okay, thanks, DAZ to Blender bridge. Let's just do it manually, shall we? Let's get rid of this. Also, load a fresh copy of my guy in. Bygen, no, I haven't. That sounds exciting. Drop a link in the Discord server if you could. That'd be good. I'm always on the lookout for new and exciting add-ons. This kind of leads us into the next thing I wanted to discuss with you, and that's how to exchange morphs between Blender and DAZ Studio. So I'll go and I'll do that in the next. I'll do that in the next tip. So for now, let's go and hide the eye target. We can give this guy a little pose if we wanted to do that. I think that is then under poses. 3D universe, toon, animals, toon. No, that's the crab. Mouse. There we go. Let's give him a sneaky pose. This is all poser format stuff. Yeah, that looks nice. That's also nice. A little cheapish. Oh yeah, there we go. This is nice. Let's have him jump and be afraid of something. Or let's have him do this. That's also, hey, I'm the mouse. It's good. Or that's also very cute. Let's use this. This is a nice pose. We'll use that. So in order to bring this guy into Blender, make sure only the object is selected that you want to bring into Blender, and then head over to File, Export. Pick a new folder of your choice. I'll use something like Toon Mouse. Just in case this becomes larger, I'll go and put this into a folder called OBJs. You don't have to do that. I'm just pernickety now. I want to get organized, you know, with my files. And I'll say Toon Mouse Posed. I'll give it a file name. I'll use Wavefront OBJ at the bottom, very important. And then scary window comes up that asks us for a lot of options. So you are forgiven to think that you could just pick the Blender preset from here, but of course that is broken and it has been for a while, so don't use that. In fact, use the DAZ Studio export setting and then drop down your scale from 100 to 1%. You can even create yourself a new object or a new preset with that, but the difference between the way Blender and DAZ Studio perceive OBJs is a factor of 100. So you need to export at a scale of 1%, and then it comes in okay in Blender. And then from Blender, you need to export at 100 times 100 to get out and bring it back into DAZ Studio so that the conversion process works. So I'm going to use 1%, hit accept, and then go and bring my little guy into Blender. So that's under File, Import, Wavefront OBJ. And now, where might that be? Blender, Toon Mouse, OBJs, that's him, OBJ and MTL file are here. Everything's all right. It's split by object. I don't want to do that. polygroups you don't need, in our case, and hit import. Blender thinks about it for a second, and here he is, the toon mouse at the correct scale. That's quite nice. So the bridge, if you use the bridge, then it'll translate materials for you, or it's trying to do that, so that's quite nice. But of course it doesn't work with every object like this little guy has shown. Click off it, click on the object again so that it is properly selected. Let's go and add that modifier to it now. Remesh. Oh, there we go. Poor little guy, barely recognizable. But that's because we've not set it up correctly. So put it to blocks, and I'm going to disable remove disconnected. And that already makes a big difference. So it looks like everything that would have been seen as disconnected, like his whiskers and stuff like that, that just doesn't show up here. So I'll go and disable that, and then I'll crank up the octree depth, and lo and behold, more and more toon mouse comes into vision. That is just such a cool effect. And I'm thinking an animation like that, that's just very, very cool. Nice idea, Brian. You can see the whiskers just about popping into place here. Oops. Very nice. Very, very cool. Let's frame him up and make a quick render out of him. So 0 on the numpad changes to my camera. N opens this little tool shelf here on the side. And I like to go to view and then go and lock the camera to view. Oops, I'm totally zoomed in on terrible. Let me go do this again. Sorry about this. So we were here looking at this guy. Let's set up a quick render for this guy. So we go press N to bring up that tool shelf here. Head over to view. Then we press 0 on the numpad to see our camera and zoom in there a bit like this. So this is basically the aspect frame in Blender. We go and tick this thing here, which is camera to view, and then this gets this little dotted red line on it. So that means when I move my viewport now, the camera will follow. It's one of the things that has greatly confused me about Blender when I started working with it. How do you set up the camera? So one of those things. The full stop on the numpad zooms in on the object. And perhaps we want to look at him like this. So let's say that's framed up now. I can go and untick this camera to view and see what I can do about lighting. So now this snaps out again. I think we do have one light source in our view. That's quite nice. So G Shift Z to move that in the same plane. I'll give him this from the, whoops. Give him this from the front, maybe. Dude. Difficult to see where that is sometimes. So let's say this is the light from the front. It's a point light. Look through the camera, have a look at the rendered view. That's this icon at the top here. Takes a moment to change over. Should also change check my render setting. My render, what's it called? My render engine. What are we actually using? We're using Eevee. Okay, that's not bad. Good to know. I didn't quite know that. That's a bit too far away. Illuminate him from the front. It's a point light, so we might be better off with an area light that we go and rotate. He's small, so it's kind of difficult to get this right. That should give him some light from the front. No, it doesn't. Why doesn't it? Totally doesn't work. Move it here and further down. Doesn't this work? Shouldn't this work? No, it doesn't. Ah! Come on, some basic lighting, Blender. Give us some basic lighting. I don't know why this looks so bad. I can't quite tell that. Don't know. Does it matter if we make it a bit brighter? No, it's just completely screwed up. I don't know what's going on. It does happen sometimes. Put you further up here. Shouldn't what's in the way? I wonder if the camera is in the way of the light. Is that possible? Could that be? Will this look better now? Huh. I don't know where these shadows come from. That's crazy. I have no idea. It's the scale of the shadow approximation, do you think? Oh, okay. Because I think the intensity was actually okay. Where do I do that, Emerga? I have no idea. Scale of the shadow approximation. Is it in shadows here? Is that it? Over here. Clip style, right, clip, that could be. And you all use cycles, actually. That's probably the best idea, actually. Yeah, let's not use Eevee, let's use cycles. Thanks. Good idea. And all of a sudden we see light that we think might behave better. Yeah, thanks. That's a very good idea. Yes, thanks. I'd love to learn something else. So Eevee is still a bit of a mystery to me. And this light behaves more like what I was expecting. And let's put this to GPU. Let it do its kernel calculation. That's one of those intricacies about Blender. When you're using cycles, it has to go and calculate its... So whenever you have a new scene, it needs to compile the render kernels once. And if you keep using that scene, that's fine. But if you then go to another scene, it still has to do that again. So this is this thing here at the top, loading render kernels. It's actually compiling the render kernels. It's just how it works. And when you use GPU rendering, it just has to do this for every new scene. I don't really know why, but that's just how it works. Blender has great other advantages though. So for example, there's been a patch in Blender 2.8 that will let you render scenes that don't fit into your GPU's VRAM still with the GPU. It does this by swapping textures in and out as it needs them, and it works marvelously well. So I've rendered scenes in Blender that did not fit into the VRAM, and like for animations this is perfect. So you take a small hit on the render time, but it works. So this is something that iRay can't do, and I think it's the way the whole the engine is coded, I believe. So this was a patch that a community member actually submitted to Blender, and it's awesome. It's in there. It doesn't work with multiple GPUs, but works with single GPUs. It's quite groovy. Yeah, same here, Mick. I've seen great results. So one of the things, and again, this is from the Emerga. There's a couple of things. Once it's calculated the kernels, I'll show you where that is. He's told me two things that I thought were absolutely amazing. One is to enable the ambient occlusion, and then the other one is screen space reflection. So you want to probably enable that. And the third thing is that you can use a light probe to kind of pre-calculate the shadows. So that was also great tips from the Emerga. Very much appreciate that. I mean, they both have, it's a bit like Filament and iRay, isn't it? They both have advantages. I don't know if Blender's actually crashed here, or is this, are you still working on the render kernels here? We can't always try this again, you know. I have a feeling Blender's probably crashed here. I might just go back to version 2.92 at this rate. It usually doesn't take this long. It's crazy. Yes, it is. I feel they both have advantages, and I like the idea of the real-time look and feel to it. Oh, come on. Okay, that's it. I've lost my patience now. Don't save. Use different Blender. Always good to have multiple versions of Blender that you can launch side by side. Hey Marcelo, how you doing? Good to see you. We're just battling our way through some Blender settings. I foolishly tried to use the DAZ to Blender bridge. Monster came out. Let's not do that. Oh, I can show you the pixel crab. This is something I have prepared earlier. Look at that. Yes, Blender 2.92 remembers it. And that has good lighting on it. So I did manage to, to make that happen at one point. Yeah, pixel crab. And what did I do here? I put, just for my understanding, how did I set up the lighting here? Oh yeah, just two lights. One from here, one from the back. And the one from the back probably doesn't even make that much of a difference. See what happens if I go and switch the cycles and GPU compute. Switch that over to rendering. So this scene I had already rendered, so Blender has already calculated the render kernels for that. But yeah, this is what it looks like rendered. Viewport, I can make that. Can we have viewport adaptive sampling? That's a good idea. And viewport denoising, enable that. Haha! Nicely done. And this guy, does he have the... Yes, he still has the modifier on it, so I can make him more pixelated and let Blender rip through that in the viewport. The new Cycles X, unbelievable, very, very cool. I'm very impressed with the render speed it brings to the party. So it doesn't take all that long to show me something. I'm not entirely sure about the viewport rendering here, so the viewport denoising. I'm gonna switch that off again. And maybe crank that up. If you put that to 0, by the way, the viewport denoising, hope you can see that here. This is the sampling for the render and for the viewport. And the viewport would stop at whatever this value is set to. I think the default is 32, I believe. But if you set this to 0, then Blender will just keep calculating and you can see what the best result is for your render. That's up here at the top left. So path tracing sample, it just keeps going up and up and up because I've set the render amount to 0. If I set that to a specific number like 12, it will go and well, I have to go and move it first. It will go and calculate exactly 12 iterations and then stop, and then you see that this remains grainy. So if I go and put this to 64, it just goes and calculates 64 and then stops. So that gives you your GPU a bit of a rest at that point. That's what that's for. But if you set this to 0, it would just keep calculating forever and keep bouncing rays out, and you can kind of keep an eye on what your render looks like at that point. And then if you feel, well, 500 is good enough for me, you can just go and set the final render iterations to 500. It's kind of a nice little tip from Andrew Price, the Blender guru. He knows it all. Very, very cool. So there we go. That's in essence how you apply the little block modifier. And it's yeah, thank you, Brian, for this tip. It's very nice. I'm looking forward to your animation. Octree depth will determine how blocky your guy looks, and it's just so many funny little iterations that you can build. It's just a nice little effect. I love it when you can use something and then just go and play with it. The downside to this is that you lose all the textures that you once had because the object is remeshed. So the textures that I once had on this object are no longer there, and I currently don't know a way around it. If this was ZBrush, we could use something like their pixels, in which you can bake a map to an outside pixel of the shape, then change the resolution, and that would basically, as far as resolution is concerned, it will retain the color value on the outside point, and you could bake new maps from that at a different resolution. So that's how ZBrush handles that. Very, very cool.